Hi everyone, welcome, John here. Today's video is going to be another basic Python web scraper. We're going to be web scraping the data from this website. It's a holiday homes website. We're going to be getting the name, the bedrooms here, and the price. A few things we're going to have to deal with is different pages. You see here there's 2,500 results, and we get to page 1 of 90. So we're going to have to deal with that. So let's get going. I'm going to copy the URL first off, and then I'm going to go to my text editor and I'm going to import requests, and then from BS4 import beautiful soup, and hopefully that works. Good. So these are the two main modules or libraries that you're going to be using with Python to get HTML data web scraping. So I'm going to set my variable of URL to the URL we just copied here, and then I'm going to go and send a request to the server to get the information from this page. So I'm going to store that in the R variable, so R is equal to requests.get and then the URL. So what that's going to do is it's going to go out and it's going to get the information from the URL we've defined, and it's going to save it in R. What we can do then is we can set up our soup variable. Soup is equal to beautiful soup, and then let's pass in r.content. That's the content of the page that we've just got, and then we're going to use the html.parser. If I go ahead now and print soup.title, we should hopefully get something back that is relevant. I've got an error. That's because I've made a typo here. It should be a dot. There we go. So we got the title of the page back. So the next thing that I always like to do is go straight to either view source or inspect element. I'm going to try inspect element for this one. We're going to inspect element, and we're going to click on this little thing here, and we're going to hover over hopefully something that resembles all of this. There we go. So we can see here that I've got a article class, but it's actually within this list. You can see as I move it over, it hovers over each one. So within this, we need to find something that we can get into to get the information out. So I'm thinking I'm going to use this div here that hovers and highlights the whole thing. So I'm going to remember this is a div and the class is property grid item. So if I copy this, might be a bit small to see, but you'll see it in a second. Get rid of, comment this out, we don't need it. And then let's do soup.find all, and it was a div, and then a class was what we copied. So because it's a class but not a Python class, we need a class with the underscore and then equals and then what we've got here. So I'm actually going to save this into content variable like this, and then I'll just print out content and make sure it returns something that looks like what we want. Okay, so we can see it's gone through and it's got all of them. We've got a lot of information here. If we just look at the bottom one, we'll see that it's got in an H2 tag, we've got the name and the link, and here we've got down here, there's the pricing part, and somewhere around here we should also have the bedroom part. There we go. So we're going to focus on these three bits of information first and get those out. So we can see here that this is in an H2 tag. So I'm going to go back to the inspect element on the website, and we're going to find that here. It's probably a bit too small, maybe a bit bigger. Okay, so it's in this div class called content and under an H2 tag. Now I'm going to have a quick check. I can't see any other H2 tags in this little bit, so that's a good place to start. So let's do a for loop. So let's do for property in content, and then we're going to do property.find, and we're going to put in the H2 tag, and we're actually going to print this out. So if we do print to check we're in the right place, like that, we should get a long list back of URLs and the name. That means that we've successfully, and they should all be different, Yep, so we've successfully isolated the content part where all the information for each of these is, which do we use? Property grid item, and then within that we've looped through each one of these, so each one of these, and we've gone straight to the h2 tag to get out the name. So I'm just going to put .text at the end of this and run it again and just lose the URL part, and we've got all the names. So what we can do now is we can store that in a variable, and we'll call that name. Now the next thing we wanted to get was the bedrooms part. So we're still within our our main bit that we got. If we go here, we can see this is under a p tag with class of property spec. So let's copy that and do the same thing again. Let's print it out first and find it. Property dot find, and it was a p tag, and it had a class, again class with an underscore equals, and then that. So let's save that and run that. Great. So we got all of the names first. Oh, sorry, we didn't print the name out, but we've got all of the p tags. Now some of them have ratings after them, but some of them don't. We'll have to deal with that later. Okay, so we can now we know that we've got that right, we'll get rid of this and we'll put .text at the end so we get the text as well, and we'll just call this one, and we'll call it spec. There we go. Right, and then the last thing we wanted was the price part, which is down here. And we can see that so it's got its own div of the class of property pricing. So again, we'll copy that and we'll just put that straight in. So we'll do price is equal to property dot find, and it was div and the class underscore was equal to property pricing, and again we'll put the .text in. So if we look at this loop, let's make heads and tails of this. So what we've got here is we've sent our request off to the server to get back the information from this URL, which is the page that we've been looking at. We stored that in the R variable, and then in the soup variable we've gone and used beautiful soup to pass that information in the content and the HTML, and then we're saving. What we're doing here is we're actually looking through all of the HTML, find all, and we're going for the property grid item, which, as we found, held all of the information that we were after for each of the little blocks. So we can see within it, there we go, property grid item. And then we were doing a little for loop where we were doing for property, and this is the variable that we were going to save it in, for in the content, and we were doing find in this variable. So if we did find in content, we would get a lot of results back, and we would only get the first one, so we wouldn't actually loop through each of the individual properties. So that's why we have to put our for loop in and do a variable here and then call the find on that. The h2 tag was where we found the text within that, the name within that, and so on for these three, and we've called the .text, so we just get the actual text from the in between those tags out. So what I'm going to do now is I'll just print those out in a nice order, so hopefully we can see them all good. Name, spec, and price. Let's run that. And there we go, there's our list. So we've got the name and the spec, which is the bedroom and the sleep and the rating, and then the lowest price to the highest price per week, I think that is. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to store all of this information into a dictionary so we can add it to a list. And I'm going to call this one property info is equal to dictionary, and we'll say the key of name is equal to name, and then the same for spec, and the value is the spec value, and price. I can type price. Okay, so if we were to print this information out, the property info, we would get a dictionary back. So we've got a nice dictionary for every single one with the name and the spec and the price. So what we want to do is we want to add this to a blank list. Now the easiest way to do this is just to create a blank list at the start, and we'll just call this holiday homes. and we'll save that as a blank list. And then here we will do holidays.append and property info. So this is our blank list, which we are going to append each and one of these property infos in every time it loops through. So what we'll do is we'll do that, and then right at the very end we will print the whole list like this. So it's going to go and loop through all of them, and now we've got a big long list with all of that information in. Okay, so now we've got this information here. We want to be able to loop through all of the pages and get every page information. So there's a few ways that we can deal with pagination. I'm going to show you possibly the simplest way. So the first thing we want to do is we want to come to our page, and we want to scroll to the bottom, and we want to move to the next page. Now, if you look at the top, you'll see how the URL has changed, and there's actually a and page button here. So if we change that to number 1, it will take us back to the first page again. And if we move throughout them, so let's say 15, it will move to page 15. So there's a couple of things we could do. We could see what happens when it gets to the end of the pages, and we could say, maybe it says, gives us an error, and we could write into our script, if it sees this error, then to break out of a loop. However, on this page, as I found out earlier, page 29 is the last page with results, but as we can see here, but if you go to page 30, it just loads up the first page again. So that means that nothing really changes. There's nothing significant that we can use to get that. So what I'm actually going to do on this one is, now that I know that there are 29 pages, I'm going to create a for loop with a range, and we're going to do for page 1 to 29, and then we're going to loop through our content again. So we just need to copy this URL and then move back to our text editor, and we're going to change the URL that we've got here for the new one, which has the page number at the end. We're going to change that, and we're going to get rid of the number. So after that, we're going to look at what we've got here. So what we want it to do is, if I just remove this a bit so we can see, what we want it to do is put the number for the page up to 1 to 29 on here, and then run through all of our code. So I'm going to put the whole of this thing into a for loop. So we're going to go for x in range. Okay, so what this is going to let us do is it's going to go through each of the numbers in that range and assign it to x. So we want to do 1 and 29. You think 29, but what actually happens when you do range is it goes up to 29, so it actually only does 28. So if I do print x here, and if we just comment this out for a second, you'll see that when I run this, we're going to get 1 to 28. So we actually need to make this 30, so it goes up to 29. And you see got 29. So that's how we're going to deal with our 29 pages. Let's uncomment this, and let's indent the whole of our code into this for loop and just move it up a little bit. So what we're going to do is, for every loop through this for loop, it's going to give us a new number for x, and that's going to be our page number. So what we want to do is, after our URL, see it ends at the equals where the number would be, we're just going to do a plus to concatenate, and we're going to do x. The only problem is that in Python you cannot concatenate an integer and a string together. So what we need to do is we need to know that because x is an integer, we need to do str to turn it into a string. Okay, so what we're going to do, missing a bracket, there we go. So now we're going to turn x, which is an integer, into a string, and then add it onto, or concatenate it to our URL. So that's going to loop through that 29 times. We're going to move our print statement out of here as well. And what we're going to do is we're actually just going to print the length of our list as opposed to all of the information. And for every time it loops through, so not within this for loop, but within this one, we're going to just do print the length of the holiday homes list as well, just so we can see that it's adding it in. To test this out, I'm going to reduce the range first. So we're going to do 1 to 5, and we're going to see what happens when we go for that. So hopefully it'll come through and it'll give us 90, which is one page. It should get 180, and then the next page, 270. There we go. So the reason why we got 360 twice at the end is because we're printing the length within the loop and then after the loop as well. So we've successfully gone through 4 pages, range 1 to 5. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 5. And we've got all the results. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add in a little sleep command, so it gives it a little bit of a break in between the requests. So I'm going to import time up here. And what this is going to do is this is just going to add in a time delay in between each of the requests to the server. It gives us less chance of actually being IP banned or anything like that. So at the end of the main loop, where we get the next page, we're going to do time.sleep. And we're going to add in, I'm going to say, let's do 3 seconds for the sake of this now. Okay, so let's let that run and let's add up to 10 pages. And instead of printing the length of Holiday Homes, let's print the whole thing out and we should get all the data just so we can verify that it is actually real data and not duplicated or something. So let's just let that run. All right, so it's finished, and if I go scroll up as much as I can, we'll see we get to 810 results, which is 9 times 90, 9 nines are 81, 810. The first one is Holiday Geek in rural Normandy. So if we scroll all the way to the bottom, we should have something completely different, and it looks like we are actually getting all the different results. So that's really good. So now that we're actually verified that it's working and we've scrolled through 9 pages and got the results, I'm going to take this back up to 30, and we're going to do something with this information. So I'm going to put this all into a pandas data frame. I've got another video about pandas data frames on my channel if you want to have a look at that, or I link to it as well. So I'm going to import pandas as PD. This is just the standard way to do it. And then at the end of our script, instead of printing the whole thing out, we are going to do df for a data frame is equal to PD, because that's what we call pandas in as, and then we're going to do dot data frame, making sure you use the capital D and F, and we're going to put in our list like this. Then what we're going to do to verify things have worked, we're going to print df dot head, and that's going to print the first 5 lines of the new data frame that we're creating. The data frame is basically like a spreadsheet, but more. So when we print out the head, you'll see that, and then we're going to export that to Excel. So we want to do df dot, we're going to do CSV actually, to CSV, and then we're going to specify a file name, and we'll just call this Holiday Homes dot CSV. Okay, not like that, thank you, also correct. So let's just double check through this. We've got our list, we've got our range 1 to 30, time.sleep. I'm going to print the length as we go along so we know that something's happening. In fact, we can make this a bit more aesthetically pleasing, and we can say Holiday Homes found, like this, and then put the length in there like that, and we're going to keep the time.sleep. I'm going to reduce it to 2, so I think 3 might have been a bit too long. And to check that all of the data frame is working, I'm just going to do range 1 to 2 first. So let's run that, and we get 90. There we go, we can see that's the top part of our data frame with all the columns, and we've got no errors. And if we go back to the sidebar, we can open up the CSV file, and there we've got it all here. So that's how you would do it. I would just then go ahead and let this run from all the pages, which I will do now, and I'll show you the output at the end. Right, that has finished, and we got up to 2563, so we know we got all of them, which is great. And let's just open up our CSV file. And we can see right away we have got an awful lot of data. So we've got 2,500 lines it's got an ID, it's got a line number, it's got the name, and then it's got this reference at the end, the number of bedrooms, the rating, and then the price per week. So ideally what we would do is we would use pandas or some other format to probably chop this reference out the end, because it looks to be a consistent length. So we could use slicing to get that off, and we could split this this string here and just get the number values, which would be quite cool. So you could then start to collect a data set together. So hopefully this has been useful for you guys. Let me know in the comments section below. If you like the video, give it a like. Subscribe is always good, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, bye.